Very good. Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Coordinating Committee to order as permitted by the Governor's Disaster Declaration of March 4th, 2022. The determination has been made that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent for the committee to meet in person. To ensure a transparent and open meeting as possible, we will post the meeting materials approximately 1 week in advance. We'll provide a recording of this meeting linked to our website, and we'll take all votes by a roll call. Staff has some additional virtual meeting logistical announcements before we start on the agenda. Stephanie?
Good morning. So just for everybody to know, this meeting is being recorded. Please use your full name in the GoToMeeting platform. Please use the mute function when not speaking. This will help eliminate excess background noise. For those of you joining us by phone, you can toggle between mute by hitting *6. Members of the public, if you have questions during the meeting, please use the chat box, which staff will be monitoring. Additionally, if you wish to address the committee during the agenda item for public comment, you may do so at that time. We will call for that. Members of the committee, when making a motion, please include your name so staff can properly record that. And that concludes my meeting announcements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Stephanie. Under agenda changes and announcements, are there any agenda changes?
There are no agenda changes.
Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on to the executive director's announcements. We're very fortunate today to have our executive director, Erin Allman, with us today, and she has a few key updates for the committee. Erin, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, President Reinbold. I want to just take a moment by welcoming back our prior members who've been longstanding members of the coordinating committee. So Committee Chair, President Reinbold, Matt Brawley, President of the Village of Montgomery, and Diane Williams, former trustee Village of Flossmoor. I really appreciate your continued service on this committee. I also want to welcome and introduce our new committee members to you here. So Stefan Schaefer, board member representing the city of Chicago, who I don't think is on at this moment, but will be joining this committee. Jessica Hector Sue is the chair of our transportation committee. She also works at the Regional Transportation Authority here, our partner in transit and regional planning. Aaron Dernbach is the chair of our climate committee from Loyola University, and Bob Tucker, who's the chair of our regional economy committee, who works for the Chicago Community Loan Fund. And Aaron, if I didn't mention, Aaron works for Loyola University. I maybe got ahead of myself there. But we really appreciate you working together. The coordinating committee is a place really where our board and our working committees can come together and sort of talk about these issues comprehensively before they get to the board. And I think we really view this as an important opportunity for us to, dig into some of the details in the way that we're not able to at the board meeting, given the business that we have to accomplish often in months. But we want to, re-energize this group. We've got 2 new committees. And so we also are bringing some more formal structures to our committees as well. So we have a pretty exciting agenda today. I wanted to just set the stage with some opening comments here. So staff will outline the agency's strategic direction and talk about our committee structure, and especially thinking about what our coordinating committee purview is going to be. We'll talk about the work plan and the bylaws. And then next, the staff will also talk about an overview of CMAP's Regional Infrastructure Accelerator grant that we've received. We got $1 million through the Build America Bureau to help support our communities, accelerate projects in our region, and we're excited to be working on behalf of the region to help advance a number of these innovative initiatives and see what we can do here to help support our local implementers here. So with that, let me turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm happy to.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Erin? Okay, great. Thank you. Hearing none, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to welcome our new members. We look forward to working with you. It's an exciting group, and we've got great staff support. I think you're going to enjoy being a part of this committee. So thank you for your service to our committee. We appreciate that. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. At this time, I'd like to combine the attendance roll call with the approval of the minutes. Requesting a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes for November 10th, 2021. When making the motion, please state your name and whether you're the first or the second. Thank you.
Hi, this is Diane Williams. I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I think, Mr. Chair, you may need to second that, as that you are the members that can vote on the minutes, as you were part of the committee at the previous meeting.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. I will second the motion. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
And this will serve as your attendance roll call as well as the minutes. So if all the committee members could unmute yourselves at this time, I will run through the names. And so if you can say present for your attendance, and then yay, nay, or abstain, which a number of you, as I stated, we're not part of the previous meeting, so you would abstain from the minutes. And I will call out your names now. Chairman Reinbold.
Present and yes.
Mayor Broley.
Yes.
Stefan Schaefer. Diane Williams.
Present and yes.
Aaron Birnbaugh.
Present and abstain.
Jessica Hector Sue.
Present and abstain.
And Bob Tucker.
Present and abstain.
Thank you. The motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Stephanie. Our next agenda item is the 2022 committee work plan and bylaws. CMAP, our staff will outline the committee's proposed work plan, which aligns with CMAP's core values, the agency's strategic direction, and the focus areas of transportation, climate, and the regional economy. And I will turn this to Stephanie for the presentation.
Thank you very much. If we can go to the next slide. Last year, the agency embarked on an internal exercise to really look at our work and our resources, and thinking through how to focus on implementation for ON2 2050 and creating goals around that implementation. And so next slide, we really started with our core values. Our core values are really centered all the work that we do. And so started looking at those in terms of to serve with passion. We want to nurture public trust by being good stewards of public resources and inclusive in our community engagement. In pursuing equity, we are guided by the principle that everyone has the right to opportunity and a high quality of life. Our commitment to excellence means that we drive for better decisions and promote best practices to inspire others to implement solutions in their communities. And finally, as we become more efficient to seek new solutions to old problems, we drive innovation. So through that, we came up with our vision and mission. So everything that we do are guided by our vision and mission. Our vision is an inclusive and thriving region. And our mission is to serve the people of the region by driving innovation, fostering shared action, and advancing towards a common vision, being mindful of the people we are planning for. It sounds simple, but we wanted to reorient our efforts towards the impact of our work. And so our strategic planning process led us to a theory of change so that our work connects to actions and the outcomes we seek in implementing ON2 2050. We broke that down into achieving three goals in three core areas: transportation, economic competitiveness, and climate. And this is where CMAP will have influence and impact. And we can stay on this slide. As part of the theory of change, the goals and objectives under these three focus areas then connect to our committees. They're the committees and the important work that they do. Therefore, there is one committee focused on each of these core areas. So a transportation committee with a goal of a transportation system that works better for everyone, a regional economy committee with a goal of a robust and inclusive regional economy, and a climate committee with a goal of a region that takes action to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change and preserves high quality resources. So next, we're going to spend a little bit of time on what does this mean for the coordinating committee. The coordinating committee plays a key role in the structure, as Aaron alluded to. This committee provides connection between the three goals and also keeps an eye on applying our core values. So the purpose and duty of the coordinating committee. So this is an update from the prior, and I'm going to go through. This is all in the new bylaws that are up for your approval. So the purpose and duties really start with broadening regional awareness and support for the agency's initiatives. And what this really means is using your network and influence. So as the agency is taking on new initiatives, really having you be an advocate for those initiatives and getting the word out throughout the region is one of the key purposes and duties of the coordinating committee. Next is assisting the agency's leadership in the decision-making processes by providing needed information. And this is really about leveraging your knowledge and expertise. So as we bring different elements to the committee, really trying to make sure that we are leveraging that great resource that we have in all of you at our committee. Next is creating a space for cross-collaboration between the three committees and the board representatives. So you are really providing that key space for cross-collaboration. So as each one of those committees works on their own individual goals and outcomes, this is where there's a space for all of those groups to come together and cross-pollinate different ideas and different actions. And next, which I think is, this is a newer one, and I think one that's really important, evaluating the alignment of the agency's work with the CMAP's core values. So really this committee will keep all of us at CMAP mindful of our core values as we do our work. So really as a reminder, as we look at all the different initiatives and the work that the agency is doing, you will be keeping us mindful of those core values in all of our work. Next, again, another important one, monitoring the agency's progress in advancing key performance measures. And so each of the committees is going to be identifying performance measures, and then they will be reporting out to this coordinating committee. So you are really holding us accountable for those performance measures and making sure that we're making that impact that we want to have with our initiatives. And then lastly, the annual report of your activities to the board. And this will happen in the second quarter of the calendar year. And this is really where you're a huge asset to the board and really conveying the information and the work that the different committees are working on. Each of the committees will report out to the board on an annual basis. And so this will really be a sequence of different updates to the board, and the update of the coordinating committee will really encompass all of the work and how those connections happen. So part of the restructuring is to take a look at our membership. So we're retaining 4 members from the CMAP board. And so thank you for those of you that are serving again, and welcome to those that are newly serving members from the board. And then also the 3 designated chairs from the 3 committees. And so really, again, this is a really unique space where we have board members and the committee chairs have a place to really talk through, as Erin mentioned, sort of talking through some of those initiatives prior to taking them to the board. So we can spend some time vetting things out and really refining things before we go to the next level with the board. So I want to just add my welcome to the new committee members. Looking forward to working with you in this new committee.
Great.
And
Thank
then
you. Questions?
one last thing.
I'm sorry. Please.
So how are we going to make sure that we are reaching those goals, those purpose and duties, is we really tried to set up a meeting structure that it'll enable us to stay focused. And so the committee will meet every quarter prior to the board meeting. And we've set up quarterly themes. So each quarter we will concentrate on a core value. So again, so we can make sure we're diving into those core values, but also we will focus in on a different committee. So each committee will have a meeting throughout the year that they will present their work to the coordinating committee. And I just realized that I've left those off of this this slide. So we will, oh no, I did not, sorry. The first meeting is strategic direction. That's the one I was looking at. So we will have one meeting at the beginning of the year where we'll really focus on the strategic direction of the committee. And then as you can see, Q2 will focus on regional economy and fostering collaboration. Q3 will concentrate on transportation and leading with excellence. And then Q4 will concentrate on climate and pursuing equity. So with that, if there are any questions about the what was presented in the slides or on the bylaws or the memo that was included in the packet, I'm happy to answer any of those.
Questions for Stephanie?
I don't have a question, just a comment that I like the organization of this and a sense of anticipation, because we know sort of what we're going to be doing when, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Sure, likewise. I don't have any questions, but I would agree that this is exciting. I think that I'm new to the committee, so I don't really have a context with which to review this, but I think that the way that you framed it out makes a lot of sense, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, very good. Stephanie, is there going to be a presentation on the committee bylaws that we're going to be considering, or do you want to just move directly into that? I know they've been provided to the committee members prior to our meeting.
That this presentation was intended to cover both. So I think if we go to the next slide, I think unless there's questions specifically about the bylaws, we would ask for the committee to take action on the bylaws and the work plan. So what you're voting on is the new bylaws, and there was a meeting schedule. So every year at the beginning of the year, you approve the meeting dates. And so those are the two things that you are approving with this item.
Okay, and I believe it's appropriate to do them both under one motion. So I will entertain a motion to approve the work plan and dates and the committee bylaws. Motion is in order.
This is Diane. I'll say so moved.
Thank you, Diane.
This is Bob Tucker.
Sure. I'm sorry, was it Mr. Tucker was the second?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Okay, are there any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Chairman Reinbold,
Yes.
Mayor Broley,
Yes.
Stefan Schaefer, Diane Williams,
Yes.
Aaron Dernbaugh,
Approved. Yes.
Jessica Hector Sue,
Aye.
and Bob Tucker.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Very good, thank you, Stephanie. Our next item is CMAP's Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. In September of 2021, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning was awarded a two-year, $1 million grant from the Build America Bureau's Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Grant Program. Excuse me, at this time, staff will provide an overview of this initiative. I will turn this to Stephanie. This is an exciting grant.
And I will actually turn this over. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet our Deputy of Research, Analysis, and Programming, but Yusuf Samala will be presenting this item.
Thank you very much,
Good.
Stephanie. Good morning, Chair Reinbold and committee members. My name is Yusuf Salama, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Research, Analysis, and Programming here at CMAP. I'm responsible for moving the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator forward. So in today's presentation, I just want to give a little bit of a background about both the actual infrastructure accelerator itself, the Build America Bureau, what the history of our Regional Infrastructure Accelerator has been to this point, some of our next steps, and what exactly is a public-private partnership. So I'll move forward with the next slide here, and we'll start off the conversation talking a little bit about the Build America Bureau, because that'll sort of set up as to where this journey is going. So the Build America Bureau is housed underneath the United States Department of Transportation, and it serves truly three different functions. The first function is to provide technical assistance to agencies like ours here at the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, but also to other municipalities, counties, and state governments around innovative project delivery and financing, or public-private partnerships. That's the term that I'll be using throughout the presentation. So they provide technical assistance. The other thing that they do is they also provide 3 credit programs, which are the Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, which is TIFIA, private activity bonds, and the Railroad Rehabilitation Improvement Financing. So there are 3 credit programs that they also offer to jurisdictions. And then lastly, and this is a good segue into the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator, is that they also have a policy purpose to provide their credit programs and their technical assistance capacity across the country. In the past, they've traditionally been working predominantly on both coasts, be it in the state of California, in New York, and down in Texas. And so the Bureau has a policy goal to expand their geographic reach. And in part of doing that, they've created this Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Program. So if I could ask if we can move to the next slide. So the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Program was developed in 2020. And the intent of the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Program, as I mentioned, was to expand the Build America Bureau's reach for the items that I've just mentioned that they offer. So in December of 2020, they issued a notice of funding opportunity for which CMAP had taken the opportunity to apply for the program. And so that's sort of what brings us to where we are going forward here. And if I can ask for the next slide. And so before I move forward to talking more about our Regional Infrastructure Accelerator, what I thought I would do is give a bit of a definition around what a public-private partnership is and what the problem that we are trying to solve actually is. And so governments in the past have typically or traditionally procured public infrastructure projects, whether they be roads, bridges, water, wastewater project, or other facilities, but by designing them either directly or through an engagement of design consultants, issuing a call for bids and accepting the lowest price bid to build them. This type of traditional procurement is commonly known as design bid build, which you see on the very far left of the spectrum here. This model has typically produced a pretty weak track record when it comes to quality, on time, and on budget delivery. More importantly, and I cannot stress this enough from my own experience, is that the risks of project delays, escalating prices, unforeseen conditions, and design flaws are typically borne by public sector agencies procuring these projects. And ultimately, our residents and taxpayers, because there is no mechanism to transfer these risks to the builders or project managers, wear them. Assets are not often maintained to an adequate degree, and difficulties in maintenance and performance are not tied back to the original builder. So the losses suffered by residents and taxpayers have the potential to be significant, and they have been significant. And indeed, the history of large infrastructure procurement, unfortunately, has been littered with examples of project overruns from projects that produce a fraction of their projected benefits. And so that's sort of what we see on the left side of the screen. On the right side of the screen is, I think, what some of you may be more familiar with here in the Chicagoland area as it relates to the definition of public-private partnership. And so what I mean by that is in our region's past, we have sort of used the term public-private partnership with the sale of the Chicago parking meters in our region, or the Chicago Skyway project. And that type of public-private partnership is a scenario when a public sector agency outright sells an asset to a private sector company, or sells it as a lease for a term of more than 50 years and receives a cash infusion. That is not the type of public-private partnership that we'll be talking about with our Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. So what is the definition of public-private partnership that we are talking about? And that's what you see in the middle here. And I'll focus predominantly on the two towards the very right, which is DBFM and DBFOM. And that will be the last time you'll hear me use an acronym, because I don't like to use acronyms. So these acronyms, what they stand for is Design, Build, Finance, Maintain is DBFM, and Design, Build, Finance, Operate, Maintain. So in this definition, what we would be doing is, rather than designing the project, whether it be with the consultant or ourselves entirely to some design metric of 80 to 90%, and procuring, what we're doing in a P3 design function is designing a project to approximately 20 to 30% at schematic design level. And then using that design as a basis as part of our tender to the private sector. The private sector partners would then resume responsibility of completing the rest of the design. They'd continue to build the project as they would in a design build, so that's the B. The financing component is where things get a little interesting. In a public-private partnership, the private sector partner is being requested that during the entire construction period, that they are taking on the responsibility of financing this project. The public sector agency would be repaying them based on established milestones and then towards the end of construction completion. We would ask the private sector partner to continue on through construction into the operations and maintenance period and being responsible for those particular items as well. So there is a solution that is offered to us as a public sector agency that has one integrated team that is focused not only on the design and construction, but they're also going to be responsible for the operations and or maintenance of a facility. So you have an integrated solution. I won't get into the details at this particular point about the financing a component of this, because as we go forward with our Regional Infrastructure Accelerator program, I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to walk through some of that as we convene our region. So I'll stop a bit right there. On top of that, I think the one thing I'd also like to add is that in the public-private partnership definition that we're talking about here, is there is no revenue risk component. Like when you talk about a tollway project. When you do a tollway project, these projects are typically being funded from the revenues that they generate, and hence puts the private sector contractor at considerable risk if revenues do not meet their estimated forecasts. And we've seen in the past throughout this country where some of the private sector partners who have been responsible for some of these tollway projects have eventually left because they've been bankrupted by revenues not meeting their expectations. In the world of P3, we are talking about, we use the term availability payments. So I'll walk through a very quick example, and that is, if you were to build a wastewater treatment facility, that facility does not generate any revenue whatsoever. That facility would be paid out of any public sector agency's general revenues or budget. So that's an availability style payment. And that is far more stable a payment structure than relying on revenues generated by an asset. So I'll leave that there. I also do that sort of thing because I like to leave room for questions. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask at the end of this presentation. So Katie, I can ask you to move to the next slide, please. So this is just a history of our Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. At this present, so as I mentioned, the Build America Bureau had issued a notice of funding opportunity back in December of 2020. We submitted an application in March of 2021, and we were successful in our application pursuit. And in September of 21, we received a notice of award from the Build America Bureau for $1 million. In February of 2022, so just last month, we executed the funding agreement with the Federal Highways Administration, which is housed under the United States Department of Transportation. Also in that very same month, we issued an RFP for public-private partnership program management consulting services. That is still a live procurement. That consultant will be assisting us with some of the activities that we'll be doing as part of this Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. We're hoping to then get started in May of 2022, so in 2 short months. Next slide, please. So what are the objectives? What are we trying to do with this Regional Infrastructure Accelerator? There are 3 components here. We are looking to accelerate the development of bridge rehabilitation, electrical vehicle, and American with Disabilities Act related infrastructure. Those are the 3 main infrastructure assets that we are looking at. The other part of this is that we understand that our region is generally new to the type of procurement model of public-private partnerships, as I outlined 2 slides previous. So what we are attempting to do is to build a Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning public-private partnership knowledge center. And this knowledge center would form a suite of documentation to assist public sector agencies in our region on how to screen a project for P3 feasibility, to assess viability in the marketplace, that you'd have a viable project for the market, and to also walk through different steps as to how you can more accurately and more precisely do cost estimation, risk analysis, and try to find opportunities in your procurement processes to reduce the length of them. So there's a lot of different things that we'd like to be doing there. That's part of our knowledge center. So we want to build capacity and a culture for delivering projects as public-private partnerships. And within all of that, the third bullet there is to improve project due diligence. Next slide, please. So we have two major phases that'll start, as I mentioned, in May of 2022. So we want to convene our regional partners as part of this first phase. We would like to educate our regional partners on what a public-private partnership is. I think I may have given you the 3-minute sort of speech on that, but it will certainly be a little longer than that. So we want to educate our partners on public-private partnerships first and foremost. Second from that, once the education has set in, we want to work with our regional partners to begin scoping projects around the 3 categories I mentioned. So I'm just going to use bridges, for example, because that might be the easiest. So we understand that there's approximately 415 bridges in our region that are deemed to be in poor condition. What we would like to do with our regional partners is to see, of those 415 bridges, which are scattered across our counties, of those bridges, can we scope out 30 bridges that may have a common look and feel? Same structure, same length, same widths, for instance. So we want to scope a project. Once we're done scoping that project, we then want to take some time, and this is sort of now going into phase 2, so I'm going to overlap the knowledge center piece there, is we want to then begin to see if we can really structure a viable project. We want to do the qualitative and quantitative analysis on this particular project. So what do I mean by that? We want to take a look at the risk of this project. We want to look at the funding of this project. We want to vet it with the private sector through a market sounding and simply ask them, this is the project that we're thinking about. Here are the parameters of that project. Here are some of the risks and the challenges of this project. Does this project make sense in its current form, or how can we improve it? And then we want to do what we call a value for money analysis. And that is to take this project, this 30 bridges, and determine what's the best way to procure it. Is it from a value for money perspective? Is there greater value for money to our residents? Is that achieved through doing it as a design bid build or a potential public-private partnership model? So we'll develop a business case on this project. Once we got the business case activity done, we're going to vet that with our regional partners and seek their approval. And if we do receive approval for this project, then we will move forward with developing a procurement and implementation plan. All of these activities are covered by this $1 million grant by the Build America Bureau. So this is a free roll for our region to establish technical capacity on public-private partnerships in our region and see if we can scope a project going forward. If we are successful in scoping the project, then we would work with our partners to bring this project to market through a competitive procurement, at which point the Build America Bureau has indicated to us that they may, and I want to underscore the word may, provide additional funding for us to get to the transaction phase. So that is a lot that we're doing, but it's very much focused on really rethinking the culture around how we develop, procure, and deliver infrastructure in our region and establishing a technical capacity to do this here within CMAP. So I want to thank you very much for allowing me the time to walk through our regional infrastructure accelerator. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than take them now or offline. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about this.
Thank you, sir. Great presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, Diane, please. Do you have a
No,
question?
I was gonna say, I'll let others ask questions because I've already made a few comments, but I do have one question and one comment.
Please,
When the time comes.
please.
So my one question is around the whole sort of P3 structure and the way we want to approach things, which makes sense to me. I do smile a little bit because the P3 model that I heard you talk about is very much like that of the private prison business, in the sense that they take on that same risk and they take on what sounds like those same kinds of responsibilities in doing that work. And that probably it's worked out well in some regards and maybe not so well in other regards. But one thing that really concerns me about it a little bit is the issue of maintaining diversity. Because as I think about what it takes to sit in that role, how many resources you have to have, what kind of access to financing you have to have, and all of the rest of that, I want to make sure that we're thinking this through and making sure that we're not minimizing diversity in the whole participation of these kinds of projects. So there should be some way to ensure that as we think it through. So my question is, how are we going to do that? But then the comment I want to make too is, just as an FYI, Stephanie, you might want to reach out to Bo Kemp at SDA, because one of the things that I know is on his plate is building a knowledge database too. And while it's not necessarily identical to what we're talking about here, there is some overlap based on what I heard today. And so it makes sense that if it's appropriate for us to collaborate when we do those things, that we do that. That's my question and my comment.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea, Diane, because I think there are some parallels with what SDA is doing too. So thank you for that. Mr. Salam, did you have a comment, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the diversity question. So prior to joining the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, I had worked for the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. You like to see how I don't like to use acronyms very much.
I don't like them either, so great.
So when I was over at LA Metro, we were working on establishing a public-private partnership program within their humbly named Office of Extraordinary Innovation. And one of the main objectives was including disadvantage-based businesses, women-based businesses, small-based enterprises, but also to involve those within the community in the actual jobs and the work that were going to be on the ground. This was a major priority of then CEO Philip Washington, who was at the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. So one of the things that we had set out to do, and we'll be aiming to do those here as well, is in any future exercise. So when we get to phase 2, hypothetically, I was saying, let's just say we've scoped a project and we're now moving this thing forward to potentially procure it. What we did in Los Angeles, and something I would see ourselves doing here, is we would hold a Meet the Prime event. And that would be an opportunity for DBE businesses, for SBE businesses, WBE businesses, sorry, now I'm using acronyms here.
That's okay. I actually know what that one is.
To have an opportunity to meet with the prime contractors so they could potentially be partnering with them. Now, where does the rubber hit the road on that? In our RFPs, or our request for qualifications, and then into the request for proposals, we would denote a certain percentage of involvement from the DBE community in these projects. Something we did in Los Angeles rather successfully, and it is something that we would look to be doing here rather successfully. So that is a major component of all this as we move forward. I think the other thing that I'd be interested to be doing as part of our knowledge center is to also be educating small business firms here in our region that are in the consulting world on public-private partnerships. So that may then soon be a business line for them in any future consulting contracts. So there's certainly many avenues that we can take to diversify the involvement in this work here. I think if you look across the country, just not only within Los Angeles, but across the rest of the United States, and you see where public-private partnerships have been used, you will notice that there has been an involvement of DBE and WBE firms. And so that's certainly something we would look to be doing here as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm delighted to know that you are thinking it through. And I'm a little bit familiar with some of the things that have happened in LA, but I raise it because I just think it's really important. I would hate to see us by default, not intentionally, but by default, exclude people because we're so focused on ensuring the financial or the lack of financial risk for us.
And I appreciate you bringing this up in this venue. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, great point. Thank you, Diane. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments for the presenter?
Now, Yusuf, I just have one question for you, and I'm sorry if you already said this. Do you see the program being structured in such a way that the assets that will be included are sort of combined at the beginning of the program, as in if there is a set of bridges that will go forward as part of the program, that those are assembled before it begins? Or do you see it functioning more as sort of an on-call resource that communities can go to if they do, say, have a bridge that they want to replace through the program, that they're able to do so over time?
Yeah, so I would look at that in two ways. So we have this regional infrastructure accelerator that we're hoping to scope a project. So let's just say that's that bundled project that I mentioned earlier. But the life of our work extends beyond the 2 years of this infrastructure accelerator. So let's just say our 2-year grant is over and we've done what we've done with it. So now let's just say we're into 2025, 2026. If there are other jurisdictions within our region that are looking to contemplate whether it's a bridge project, a road project, a water, wastewater project, any other sort of public infrastructure asset that anyone would be operating or maintaining, we would be looking to work with them to say, hey, does this project make sense as potentially doing it as a P3? So if it's to your question about bridges down the line, we would be working with that public sector agency to say, all right, is there a bridge or a bridge, multiple bridges that we could be assisting you with? And I think that's the real value add here, is that we're trying to create a center of knowledge around public-private partnerships that transcends beyond the regional infrastructure accelerator. And that is, it serves a longer term nature for our region, and I believe a value add. And if not just on public-private partnerships, I really think it's something that we can provide tools for how agencies can look at evaluating risk a little bit more precisely and accurately, or doing better cost estimation if it's just on a bridge project that's a standalone, and that may be done as a design build, for instance. Because I think there is certainly room for improvement on how we do project due diligence, not just within our region. This is very much a nationwide issue. I hope that answers your question, Jessica.
It does, yes. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the questions. Any other questions or comments before we move on?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, so great point, Diane. We've already had some conversations with Bo Kemp, so I will add this to our list. So that's a great one. And I did just want to point out to the committee, so this meeting theme is about strategic direction and then driving innovation and serving with passion. And so we brought this project to you because we really do feel that this is one of the ways in which we are driving innovation and also, sort of making sure we're good stewards of the money that we are getting. But also I wanted to point out, Diane, rightly so, held us to account for all of our core values. So one of the things that we might do is actually add those core values as part of sort of our opening for the meeting. So you all can have those in front of you. And as you're listening to the different presentations, really keeping in mind, it's not just about those core values that we're focusing on that given day, but how are we bringing some of those other core values into play with those presentations. So I think we talked about collaboration as well, right? Some of this is how can we work on things together, and also the leading with excellence. But I think Diane bringing up the pursuing equity needs to be part of all of our work as well. So I just wanted to comment on that. And that's the types of things the types of conversations that we are really excited about having with this group.
Thank you.
Yep. Great. Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate that. Are there any other comments or questions? Very good. Well, sir, thank you. It was a great presentation. Very excited about this, and we look forward to the fruit that it will bear. So thank you very much for that. If there is nothing further on this topic, we'll move to other business. Is there any new business to come before the committee this morning? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we will move to a public comment. Question for staff. At this time, staff will read any comments that we've received prior to today's meeting and recognize any speakers that we may have in the chat box. Stephanie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder, if attendees do wish to address the committee, please indicate so in the chat box. You will be called on. Mr. Chair, we did not receive comments prior to this meeting, and I do not see any comments or requests to address the committee in the chat box. And I would just ask at this time, if there's anyone who's on the phone who wants to unmute themselves, if they wanted to address the committee, they could do so at this time. And hearing none, Mr. Chairman, it appears there is no individual wishing to address the committee at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Stephanie. If there's no further public comment, I'll note for the record that our next meeting is scheduled for May 11th, 2022. Hopefully, we will meet in person at that time. That remains to be seen. I wanted to thank everybody for your participation. Again, I wanted to welcome our new members to the committee. We appreciate your attendance and your service. And if there is nothing further from the members, we will stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to meet you all.
You too.